Welcome to the Love Anarchy podcast in the Relationship Rebellion, where we get deep about love, relationships, and dating. We uncover the facets of real, conscious love. I'm Andrea Atherton, your host, psychotherapist, and love expert, here on episode 196. Today, to talk about using dreams, energy, and your conscious awareness to gain deeper insight into your potential romantic partners. We're going to look at ways we can explore how we feel someone's energy before we intellectually connect or give our hearts away. And dreams have messages from the subconscious, often reflecting relational truths. We're going to welcome back our guest, Saranam Mark Greenberg. He is a spiritual life coach. He specializes in chakra healing. He clears cords, intrusions, and entities, and he empowers clients to heal themselves and unlock hidden potential. And this is a time where people start looking for love. Do you want to be magnetic? Do you want to exude love energy so people are just attracted to you? Then go ahead and sign up for a free clarity call. We can talk about how we can get those results. Look down in the show notes or go ahead and find me, AndreaAtherton.com. Listeners, pull up a chair, cuddle up with your sweetheart, put your AirPods on, continue to clean the kitchen, or turn us up on your car stereo as we give a warm welcome to Saranam Mark Greenberg. Welcome back, Saranam.
Thank you.
Nice to have you back. And I realized I was listening to our recording was May 8th when it dropped. So about a year ago.
Okay, just about a year ago. Great.
Yes. So
see what new insights come through.
You had been on my mind. So I'm like, well, I'm going to reach out again. And you're going to share some wisdom about partnering, energy, and dream work.
Sure. Well, again, it's from my perspective as someone who does energy work, someone who's working with what are normally the invisible or behind the scenes, you might say, energies that are affecting our emotions and our attractions, every aspect of it. But it's not what is apparent. But I can tell you what things look like from my perspective, in relationships. And I will say, just as a caveat, that I am currently not in a relationship. So in some cases, having more awareness can make you more cautious about entering a relationship if you kind of get a idea of what you might be taking on. I think that's where you can get more perspective from the energy work side of it. You can get a kind of a little preview or a heads up anyway about things that people can't necessarily share, even if they wanted to. They're not aware of them, right?
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, and energy is oftentimes the first thing we notice, even though it's not conscious.
I agree. So, I love, the Sufis, they talk about love all the time, because they think it's the greatest thing, because they say, the mind is always protecting itself. It's always being careful, but love will just go and hurt itself. Right.
Wild abandon. Right.
Right. It's like that. And so for them, that's like the closest to God. That's it. And so, in some ways I'm mentioning the things that could make you more cautious, but it's good to take it in that light. It's if you're more perceptive of what you are taking on in a relationship, and even also where the attraction is coming from. In my experience, again, I've been a spiritual seeker all my life. I don't know if that makes a difference in how or who I've been attracted to, but I've often had this feeling of like some kind of soul connection when I first meet someone. Especially the initial attraction, there's something, it's like the person feels familiar, you know them, or you've already loved them. That love at first sight feeling can be like that too. There's something, and it's almost like you're looking right through all the issues they might have, all their experiences from this life, things that are definitely going to come up in a relationship. You're seeing this essential soul that is beloved to you. And so, and you can just dive right in on that attraction, and then all of a sudden you find yourself in right what comes next. When you're mutually triggered and you're playing all of that out. Obviously you can learn things from that, but I would say yes, you can use your energy awareness, and some of it does come up in dreams, even if you don't feel like you have a clear sense of what's going on in another person's energy field. That's what I find for a lot of people, even like after a first date, that will come up in dreams. You'll not necessarily see that person in your dreams, but you'll have dreams that seem different than your normal dreams. You've kind of communed with this person's energy, and especially if you're thinking of bringing them into your life, that's the act of communing in a relationship is like bringing someone into your family, sort of adopting a family member. And so it's maybe similar to, at least it is for me, so the connections I might have with children or other family members, where I'll feel it in my dreams. I'll have some different kinds of dreams. For me, it's usually I'm the central character, but I'm in a different kind of dream world than my usual dream world. It's like I'm experiencing things that are more a part of this person's
interesting, yeah,
astral reality. And I don't, that might be somewhat unique to me, but I think to a certain extent, right, if you look for that, if you look for changes in your dreams, you might get a little clue about, because it's not just this person that you're taking on, it's also the people that are connected to that person, the cords that person has with, could be past relationships, could be children, could be other family members, could be astral entities that aren't even physical, so there's a lot of things that come with a person when you open up to them. And so that, anyway, those are some of the things in it's funny. In some ways it makes me more cautious, but then, sometimes that initial feeling of love is so strong, you will choose to take it on anyway. I've definitely done that before too. I remember very clearly being in a certain situation. It was, I don't know, maybe a second date or something, right at the beginning of a relationship. And my mind was saying, just walk away. Just walk away. It's too much. It's too much to take on. But my heart just wouldn't let me, and I dove in anyway.
Right, and then there's conflict between the two. But then sometimes it's hard to know if it's past conditioning that's telling you to walk away.
So that's a great point. Okay, so that, and that has a lot to do with attraction as well, because now you're talking about what's going on in your own energy field. And my experience of those structures, they are energetic structures, and I can observe them. A lot of people can't see them, but almost everyone can sense them or feel them if they practice. Seeing is not necessary. Seeing might give you some additional insights, but feeling is the most important thing. So here's a common example. People, it might have started in childhood, or it might have come from a painful relationship. People have heartache, or they have a feeling that something that hurts them or harms them is associated with love. And in response to that, I see it all the time. They'll develop kind of a shield. It literally looks like an energetic covering over the heart. That's what you might call an electromagnetic structure. Okay. Even if science can't observe it, it's an energy structure, and it has those kind of magnetic properties. So if you're creating a shield, let's say, you experience some certain kind of person, let's make it even extreme. Let's say they were even abusive. Abuse was mixed with love, because it's not just all one thing. There's a mixture, right? Then now you're on guard. That really hurt you. So now you've created this energy structure over your heart that's watching out for that. See, that energy structure is kind of paranoid because it's looking for the exact thing that you don't want. You see how that works? And so in a magnetic kind of way, and people talk about this in the law of attraction. Yes, because magnetically it's watching out for that. It's attuned to that energy. It's attuned to that energy on a feeling level. This is all happening below your conscious mind. Consciously, no way do you want that, but you created this structure that is, because it's watching out for it, right? So people wonder why. It's like a vicious cycle.
And why do I keep attracting the same person over and over?
Right. So it is worthwhile. Like I'd say I'd spend about equal amounts of time in my life in relationship and out of relationship. It's definitely worthwhile to spend some time after a relationship, because if a relationship ended, obviously something didn't go right, right, or you'd still be in it. To work with your own energy field and see what you can do to change those structures, or essentially, and people talk about this in other podcasts, to kind of become the person that you want to attract, rather than sort of looking for someone who's going to save you right from yourself.
I hear so many people say, I'll open my heart when somebody loves me. I'll love back if somebody loves me first. I'm like, it does. Law of attraction or attracting energy doesn't usually work like that, because they don't feel safe enough until somebody kind of breaks down their wall.
Yes. And listen, there are good reasons for that attitude. I don't know too many people. I certainly didn't get all the love I needed in childhood, and most people didn't. Most people,
you're right.
There's this other thing that happens in childhood, because a lot of these heart shields, they really do start in childhood. In childhood, think like when you're like 2-3 years old, can barely talk, but you're learning a lot of things, okay, from your parents. You get, oh, go, good girl or good boy, and you get, no, you can't do that. So you barely, even before you can talk, you've got this association between love and self-repression, because when mommy says no, she, her love is withheld. You're not getting her love unless you're behaving the way she wants you to, or daddy. But usually the early childhood teacher is usually mommy. And so she doesn't have to be a mean mom. She doesn't have to be an abusive mom. She can just be preparing you for the world that she knows. And these are the ways that fit in, and these are the ways that don't fit. But you're just a natural, self-expressive being. And you don't know anything about that. You don't know the rules of the world. And so how it feels to you is that some natural part of your self-expression is not okay. It's not loved. It doesn't receive love. It gives you a bad reaction when you express it. And so you stop loving that part of yourself, and you start using your will to hide and to repress that part of yourself. This happens long before you even go to school. Okay.
Yes. Right? And before your frontal lobe totally develops.
Right. You're at that age where before you have discernment, you're just absorbing all these things. You're in a theta state of consciousness at that age, and so you're just absorbing. So in most people, the way I see that energetically is, even if there's not a big shield over the heart, there will typically be this area at the bottom rim of the heart chakra leading in to the solar plexus, where there's this association between love and self-repression, because you learn that's how you get love. As a child, you have to do what mommy or daddy says, and if you grow up as a girl, you're going to become a woman. Oftentimes that's even more intense, because girls are typically taught to be nice, which essentially means not to bother anybody.
Right. And not to have feelings. And that's what we do. And
not to express yourself, at least not to express those feelings.
And not to have needs.
A lot of things, right? A lot of things that I see lead to a contraction and a shielding at the solar plexus. And so if you have, this is just energy, this is just how I see it energetically. If you have an energy pattern in your field where you're contracted or even pulled in, you might say, at your solar plexus, at your will center, then you're typically almost magnetically going to attract someone who is pushed out in that area, who is willful. This could be a man who also got that same kind of conditioning, but learned to use his will to sort of overpower, and he's not in touch with his feelings either. But he's doing it in the opposite way, using his will to, make things happen, right? And so oftentimes you'll see that, and you can observe that in relationships all the time. You're pulled in a certain area, and you attract a partner who's overly assertive or dominates you, basically, and because that's what you're used to, So the real way to fix that is to take some time out of relationship and work on your own energy pattern. These are unconscious things. You can't just decide in your mind, I don't want to do that anymore, because these are unconscious patterns. You have to, in some kind of somatic feeling way, bring energy in there to change that. I'll call it an electromagnetic energy, to change that pattern of energy in your field, so that, then, for example, at the heart and the will, then that makes you more expressive, that makes you more able to assert your own will. And then, so then you're likely to attract a different person who's more accommodating. You don't have to flip. A lot of times people will flip.
Yeah, the pendulum will swing.
Well, because, if you learn in childhood that there's only tops and bottoms, you're one or the other, right?
Right. Yeah.
And so you're like, you see this very commonly in people who were really abused, that they will switch and in later life and become perpetrators, right? It's like they spend most of their life being a victim, and then all of a sudden something switches and then they go to the others. So, obviously that's not the solution. So it's a big change that I'm talking about here, because you're not just changing to another role that you were exposed to in childhood, because that's what you're exposed to. Either someone's dominant and someone's submissive. You're actually changing the paradigm that you grew up with, the underlying, which is also the paradigm that functions largely in our society. So you're making big changes in your belief about what's possible. That's a big step right there.
Definitely a huge step. So how does this relate to dreams, or how can dreams help us with our energy or our awareness?
Right. I'm sure, you're, you work with dreams. I find that dream symbology, although there are common themes, is a little bit personal, but there are some things that'll just stand out. Like, for example, that theme of domination, or feeling oppressed, or dominated, or literally abused. That can lead to dreams that are actual nightmares, where you're being chased or pursued, or held captive, or things like that. That's extreme, but it's all in that same theme of. So dreams like that are showing you something. They're showing you something about. If they're recurrent, then they're showing you something about what got programmed into you, and what you can change. A lot of the work I do is self-empowerment work. It's really learning to connect to the divine source directly, and now you're not a child anymore, but you still have an inner child in your unconscious. And so you kind of connect to the divine source in some way, as not like this judgmental God that you hear about in some religions, but as, a presence that just has love for you. Really, there's no judgment. That's my experience when I'm really connecting to those transcendental sources. I know this isn't what some people learned in their religions, but that's my experience. When you get kind of out of this earth plane of existence, there's all kinds of higher beings you can connect with before you're, connecting with the ultimate vast source, or whatever you want to call it. But none of them are judging you. They really are not. From their perspective, this world is looking sort of like a hologram or a game, so they don't judge you. No, none of the ways that your mom or dad judged you. And that's a tangible feeling. When you open up to that energy, you can bring in this tangible feeling. Okay, here is a being. You can connect with a being. You can go to beings that are very close, like the earth is a consciousness.
Yeah,
it has a consciousness.
I was doing the meditation from last year, and that felt really good. It's like, oh, get remothered as you connect with.
Yes, that's exactly it.
So yeah, that felt so natural, no pun intended, and good. It's like,
right. That's right. That's what I tell people. Adopt the earth as a substitute for your imperfect mother. There's all kinds of. You don't even have to understand all the reasons why she wasn't the perfect mother. Okay, right? She was
human.
That's right, and we're in a dysfunctional society where the whole society is dysfunctional. It's pretty obvious, and so so you can adopt. This mother who has only love for you, and you're going to feel it when you really connect with her. You're going to feel that love come into these places that you learned were not lovable. That gives you feelings of unworthiness, shame, self-judgment, all these things that are unconscious that because you don't even remember what a lot of them are if they were repressed in early childhood. But you can feel the love come in there, and you can start to reclaim these gifts. So that, that's reclaiming yourself. That repressed will I was talking about earlier, that goes along with feelings of unworthiness. You have to feel worthy to feel like you can assert your will, or else you're faking it,
there's our masks, right?
Right. I was definitely taught to do that as a man. Just fake it, even if you don't feel like it.
How many times have you heard "fake it till you make it"?
Right, exactly, totally. No, I literally heard that.
And then going back to dream work, we're talking about that's when we're sleeping. Our consciousness can step aside, so we can go to the unconscious and subconscious material, and that's oftentimes where we can get more profound information and metaphor and symbols for it.
Right. So that one I mentioned, the domination theme, that's a common one. Yep. That could come up, so that could come up when you meet a new person, maybe because they have that in their field. Either they're dealing with that feeling of being dominated. That's pretty common in the workplace. There's always some boss or somebody you have to answer to, or else they have, that energy, or that's how they feel to you. Now, of course, in your dreams, you're going to see how it feels to you. It could be that they match a pattern that you associate with somebody dominating you. So it could be your issue, or, so that's part of what you have to discern in the dream. Is this my issue coming up, or is it something in this person, or is it both? Either way, it could be, you have to decide that you're ready to confront that issue if you're going to dive into that relationship, because it's obviously going to come up, right? Yes. There's the preview. Right. Yes. There's the preview. Right. So.
Yep. And sometimes I think of like all characters in my dream being a part of me.
Yes, that's a great way to interpret dreams. I interpret dreams that way also. Right.
Yeah. And the feeling being the most important thing, maybe not, definitely the symbolism and what that means to you. And then how do these symbols show up in your waking life?
Right. That's kind of the new philosophy is, and even in physics, the newest theories are talking about that the material world is sort of a metaphor or like a dream symbol that's coming from consciousness is creating it, right?
Yes. It's like, I love the idea that it's a game, and that's why you can use dream work too. I'm curious.
To play better, right?
In our dreams, can we get some information of maybe like past life connections or anything like that?
I have seen that, okay. I don't know if I can verify it. That's the thing. I don't have clear enough memories. Most people, that's kind of part of the deal. When you come into this world, you get amnesia. And so they seem like past lives. They seem very vivid, but you can't I can't verify if it is or if it isn't.
Mm-hmm.
I will see that sometimes, especially that feeling like you know someone. Sometimes you'll see who they might have been to you in some other realm, especially if it's really out of context. I remember someone showing me herself in a obviously Egyptian, style, not modern Egypt, ancient Egypt, like almost like I could see the Isis wings and that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes a little glimpse showing you the connection. That doesn't make me wary. That's usually nice. Those past lives, sometimes, some past lives are traumatic. So, sometimes that will come up, especially like, right, there's the long burning times in Europe. I work with a lot of people who still have very vivid dreams about that kind of trauma, being persecuted for your gifts. That's I think that has a lot to do with the general suppression of women in Western culture. It comes from those times, right? And so it's a scar that still exists in our whole society. Even if you didn't actually experience it, it's in the undercurrent. There's a fear, especially for women, but for anyone to express things that seem weird or different, that seem like, right, somebody might come out, in the old days, they're going to come after you for that, right? So, right.
Yeah, it's just not as direct in our culture, but yes, it still is that underlying fear, because sometimes men don't understand that women are hypervigilant. We're always we develop our intuition because we're like, for there's
safety.
Always, yes.
Mm-hmm. Right. No, men largely do not understand that. Mm-hmm. I would say no, like men do not understand why, how a woman would be just walking down the street, hypervigilant, or always a little bit watching out for danger, because they're not watching out for danger, right?
No, they don't even, they can't even wrap their heads around it sometimes. They're like, why won't you walk down that dark alley by yourself? It's just a couple feet.
Right, so, exactly, right. Yeah. So, so I would say the dreams give me a preview. It's not necessarily something it's just additional information. It's not, so that you can take that in. I always take that into consideration when I'm making all my decisions about life. I look at my dreams, or if I'm considering something, whether it's a relationship or whatever it is, I want, people always used to say that I want to sleep on it. I want to see what my dreams tell me. So right. Yeah. Right. I want to see what my dreams tell me about it, because they will always show me a little preview. If I'm thinking of going in a certain direction, could be a career thing, not even a relationship thing, my dreams will show me a little preview of what that kind of looks like or feels like to me. And then that kind of gives me, additional information. I can still, like I said, sometimes the heart will just carry you forward, even if you can see it's going to be difficult. But it's nice if you can at least see that in the beginning, instead of when you got both feet in, right? Forewarned, right?
Saranam, is there a way that you can intentionally provoke information in dreams, or provoke?
Oh, yes. Well, see, I'm not even used to doing that. I know there are ways, right? That's when you're getting, that makes me think of like lucid dreaming techniques, and, or you can wake yourself up. Some people will set an alarm. I never do that, but I do just I have a dog. Sometimes my dog wakes me up, or I have to go I drink a lot of tea during the day. I'll have to go to the bathroom. So if you wake up a few times during the night and you're able to go back to sleep, that's the thing. Sometimes people wake up and they can't get back to sleep. So I have compassion for that. But yeah, if you wake up a few times in the night, you're liable to remember more of your dreams. You'll get more of the information. As far as like, the information is just there. That's what I think. You don't really have to provoke it, other than just by doing your normal life. If you're like considering something, like if you're thinking, hey, I might bring this person into my life. If you're if you've talked to someone on the phone, or you don't even have to meet them in person, just whatever it is, enough for you in your consciousness, in your heart and your mind to genuinely say, okay, I might pursue a relationship with that person. I'm opening to that person. It'll show up in your dreams for sure. It will. It definitely will.
And does it show up in your energy too? Can you tap into your energy?
Yeah, yes, I in certain cases I can. And that depends on the person, how much it shows up in your energy field. Oftentimes, if you're talking to a person, like I said, it doesn't even have to be in person. But you're open to them. Because when you're opening your heart, you're opening your energy field. You're like, okay, that's what it means to become into an intimate relationship. You're opening all your chakras. That's of course why the shields are up. The fear, because it's a vulnerable state to be in. But even in the beginning, you are starting to create some openings. It's for sure at the throat chakra. So oftentimes there will be a throat chakra cord that's more or less like an empathic connection with that person. Now, depending on who you are, you might receive a lot of information from that person, or, not so much. That depends on your empathic sensitivity. One thing I will say is when there are other astral entities attached to a person, because that's an issue too. Some people, it's actually fairly common in my work, but that is why people come to me. So I'm in a little niche.
So there's a reason why you see a lot of people.
Right. I see a lot of that, but right. There are parasitic astral entities. They've talked about them throughout history. They have names for them in every culture. And they are typically dominating. They typically want to dominate and enslave people. And, so that dominating theme can come up. And also they are often a source of, these negative thoughts or latching on their intelligence. So they will latch on to a person's own self-deprecating or self-judging thoughts and kind of fan the flames, create more of that, So watch out for things like that. That's where you might notice something that feels, like if you're feeling like, oh, I'm getting a pain in my neck from after I talk to this person, or listen, isn't that one of our expressions in life, a pain in the neck or pain in the ass?
Oh,
These are all right. These are common places for entities to attach. I'm telling you, the ass would be more of a sexual level, or from the back intrusion, and so. But no, these are real things where they do attach. These are not just made up expressions, and so. Yeah, then that's an additional caution. Now you're not just taking on this person and whatever they got programmed with, and whatever's in their consciousness. There's also a third party that's involved, and so in a case like that, I think you either need to know that you have the ability to help this person with that, or I wouldn't want to take that on without knowing that.
Yeah, no kidding.
Right.
And we talked in the last podcast too, and we talked about like having sex with someone and having all your chakras open and things, and how important it is to be aware of maybe some kind of this dark energy.
And it's hard to be aware of that. Listen, it's on my radar, so I tune into it, but it is, and it's more common than you think, kind of like STDs. It's things that latch onto energy.
The energetic STD, right?
It's like that, and some of them are the ones that are the hardest to recognize are the ones that have come through the family lineage, because if there was something attached to your mother or your father, it's certainly attached to you in childhood as well. That's a third party, but you don't recognize it because that just becomes part of what you're learning is normal about life. And so you just think of that as part of yourself. So if you've had like this negative voice in your head all your life, you're like, oh yeah, that's just me, but I don't know why, but maybe it's not. It might be, there might be something adding to that about self-deprecating chatter. That's what I find there often is. And so those are hard to recognize if they come from, but if you encounter it through another person in adulthood, that's when people come to me, because they definitely notice it then. It doesn't have to be through a sexual encounter, although that is a common way. Very often, if you happen to encounter an abusive partner, someone who's actually violent or physically or verbally abusive, there are often third-party entities attached to people like that who just seem to go out of control, or like it's like they're another person in those moments. It's not like a full-on possession, but something is heavily influencing that person. That's very common, very common. Same thing in childhood. If you had an abusive parent, it's common around people who are alcoholics or drug addicts, things like that. Or that's not the only place, but those are some things to watch out for. Again, if you don't know how to handle those things, then you should come see me or somebody who does.
Exactly.
Because that can make a big difference, and that can also be part of the reason why you keep attracting people who are like that. If you feel like you're in a pattern of attracting abusive people, sometimes that can be because there's one of these third-party astral entities attaching to you. So if a dark being like that is attaching to your field, they attach through a cord, that creates an energy structure in your field. It creates sort of a dark energy structure in your field. And we attract things through our consciousness. That's, everyone knows about the law of attraction now, but they don't exactly know how it works. This is kind of an unconscious aspect of it, that you start magnetically attracting things that are more of a match for, like, say, this entity's dark energy, or than they are really for your genuine, authentic self. So you can get those out of your field, and then of course you have to work with the underlying issues that they attach to. But you can make a lot of big changes in your energy field that will change they don't change fundamentally who you are, because that's in your soul, but they change the energy configuration in your field, and that definitely changes what is magnetically drawn to you, or what you're drawn to. Right.
So are there any techniques to become more aware of possibility of that in your field, or?
Sure. On our last talk, I did give a short energy clearing visualization, and on my website I have free videos, saranam.us. That's me, Saranam. I have free videos that kind of walk you through that process, just so you can get more awareness of your chakras. For some people, that really works. Some people, it's more difficult, especially if the energy just hasn't been flowing through a certain area in a long time. A lot of people especially have that restriction around their root chakra. If the energy just hasn't been flowing through there, even since childhood, it doesn't have to be sexual abuse. It could just be sexual repression, or fear or shame. I didn't grow up in a religious family where they, there was like original sin or something, but nobody ever talked about sex. And so it just seemed like something hidden and dirty or shameful or something, right? So you can get that impression totally non-verbally, and that so if you have something like that, or your own existential shame, kind of gets transferred to your sexual energy, then it becomes sort of sexual shame. Those are just common reasons why the root chakra can be blocked. Then it might be hard for you to just open up to that through visualization, to actually feel the energy come through. Because you might have to move something out of the way. You have to move that obstructing shield or whatever it is, the energy structure that's blocking the opening. But people are generally more successful opening to the crown. That usually feels easier to make that. So I teach that to just connect from your crown, from your heart through your crown to the sun. I always start with like that heart math technique. Really center in your heart. Take some deep breaths in your heart. Think about something that makes you feel good, that makes you feel grateful or appreciative in your heart. So you're kind of resonating with a higher vibration then. So if you start in that higher vibration, then when you go up to connect with something celestial that's in a higher vibration, you've got an energy match. So so you don't connect with something else, right? So yeah, it's always good to start with that kind of a loving or grateful feeling in your heart. Then I connecting to the sun is the most obvious place, just because it's a physical object. It's in our world. That's not praying to the sun, if you're a religious person, nothing like that. It's just connecting to the sun as a friend. So a being, another conscious being who's bigger than you are, but who already knows itself to be one with the divine source, so it can share that feeling with you, because we don't, it's not usually obvious for humans. They might believe it, but to feel it is another thing.
Well, yeah, to think it and to experience it, right?
Right. So that, that's the beginning to, that's what I'd say is the beginning, connecting with a being like the sun or the earth, being who are already in full conscious communion with the divine source, so that they can share that energy with you. So it's a tangible somatic feeling, what that feels like to be in connection. And now you're feeling what that feels like to be in connection. And so now you've got an energy that's just completely loving. There is really no judgment in that field at all. And it's also completely dissolving of lower frequency structures. So, then you can just bring that energy through for whatever chakra where you're feeling obstruction, your throat, your heart, your genital. The genitals almost form their own chakra, right? They're right there at the root chakra. They're associated with the sacral chakra. But there's so much strong energy in the sexual energy.
I didn't realize that. Yeah.
It is like a minor chakra. It really is. Or in ancient times they may not have even considered it minor, because it really gets affected by energy. And, which is why in Tantra, it's so powerful when you redirect that energy, when you're, instead of sending it outward, when you send it upward, wow, does that make a difference? That speeds things up a lot, for activating those higher chakras. So, right.
I got one more question. You were talking about getting information from other positive entities and,
right.
And other dimensions. Can we access information about our relationship or, our energy, our readiness to be in
Sure. Absolutely. Absolutely. And I do that regularly. In fact, because I have my own human attraction, just like any human, and there's different things involved in it. Some of it might be a physical attraction, and you don't know exactly why you're drawn to a certain person. So whenever I have a feeling like that, I always immediately check in with Mother Earth and say, "What do you think about that?"
Okay, yeah. You get grounded, and
that's my go-to. But you could just as easily go to the sun, or if you're familiar connecting with higher beings. Some people have a strong relationship with Jesus, and it's not just a one-way thing where prayers go out but they don't come back. That's the joke in psychology. I don't know if you know this joke, but have you heard that if you talk to God, you're praying, but if God talks to you, you have schizophrenia, right?
No, that's funny. See, I thought it was meditation.
Right.
Yeah. Meditation, you're listening to God. That's
right. So you have to. Yeah, that's a funny one. It's very true in our modern world. Honestly, because if psychologists are not trained to believe that anything like that exists. They think consciousness is an artifact. In order to get that higher guidance, you have to develop the ability to receive it. Okay, so initially, it's going to be somatic for most people. Initially, unless you're already a sensitive person, you're not typically going to hear verbal responses. Like I can have a conversation now with these beings, but initially I could not. Initially, it was all just feeling. And so you want to start with that. This is why I always say, start in your heart. Your heart is the place inside you that is just intrinsically or quantumly connected to that source consciousness or unified field. And so when you start with the heart, you start with that kind of loving or grateful feeling in the heart. Now you didn't have to reach for that anywhere. That's right inside of you. Go to the sun, because the sun is it's an obvious source of radiant light in our world. It's obviously giving life to this world, but it's also annihilating. Any object that falls in the sun is going to burn up. So it has, just like the divine source, it has both those qualities. And you can feel the response. It's all about feeling. You want to feel something, a tingling, a warmth, some sense that you're really doing it. Then you can use your breath. It's always good to use your breath with intention. Use your breath, open up your crown. So you've got now a big column of light, not just a little beam of light at the center of the head. You can open up the full diameter of the head. Then you can bring that down, not just into the other chakras, but you can bring it all the way down to the root chakra. And that may help you make a connection with the earth, because the earth and the sun are always in connection.
It reminds me of the masculine and feminine.
But yeah, just knowing that the sun and the earth are already in connection, and you're just putting yourself in the center of that can help you make that. I would start with that. And then when other beings come to you, or when you're reaching out for other beings for guidance or assistance, that's what I've learned to do, because there are these deceptive beings out there. They'll show up and say, oh, hey, I'm Archangel Michael here to help you, but they're really not. They can fool you with their voices, but they can't fool you with their energy signature. So if you're already connected to the sun, now you can feel that, and you know what that loving frequency is. Any other being who either approaches you or you reach out to for help, when you feel that being in your field, then you can check with the sun. Now you've got someone who can confirm or deny. And before you open up to that being, you can say, what do you think about this? What do you feel about this? And, just either through muscle testing or some way, you can feel a yes or no response. That's what I would start with, the yes or no response from either the earth or the sun. And then, because I've had a lot of beings who've helped me along the way in my work, and it can help you with relationship. It can help you with every area of your life. Those beings want you to be happy, So,
yep, and they're there to help.
They are there to help. And it's not like there are just parasitic beings in the astral plane. There's lots of helpful beings, but because it's a mixed bag, just like on Earth, you can't trust everybody you meet on the street. You have to have a way to discern. And discernment is very important when you start working on the astral plane. So that's what I would do.
Yep. And that full meditation is in the last podcast. That series.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. I have it on my website. I have an online class. It's only $49 now, where I go through all of these things in great detail, 6 classes. You can do that too if you want. And the last class I'm talking all about how to use your sexual energy to do that, which is a big part of, because that part, reclaiming your own sexual energy, is a big part in relationship. That can really help you to reclaim your own energy and feel what it is. And
it's such a big part of who we are.
Right. Everybody's talking about this now, how powerful sexual energy is for manifesting things or doing this, creating what you want in your life. But it's very powerful for speeding up or activating your spiritual life. Yes, that's like the rocket fuel.
Yes,
using your sexual energy.
Oh, that would be really interesting to go through that series. And this is such a great place to end the podcast. So how can people find this information or find out more about you or how to work with you?
Right. Yes, you can find me on my website, which is saranam.us. Just like it's spelled, SARANAM.US, not .com. That takes you somewhere else.
Yep. I'll have that down in the show notes with a link.
Yeah, I have the videos there, and I have I have actually quite 4 previews of the online class. I am also on YouTube. Saranam Mark Greenberg is my YouTube channel, and that's how you can find me.
Thank you again for coming on, Saranam. Namaste.
Yes, namaste to you, Andrea, and it's always a pleasure. I hope to talk to you again.
And thank you, listeners, for listening in with us on the Love Anarchy podcast and the Relationship Rebellion, where we get deep about love, relationships, and dating, and we uncover the facets of real conscious love. I'm Andrea Atherton, your host, signing off. But before I do, I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for listening in with us, because I know you have a myriad of podcasts in which you can choose from. Please subscribe, but download. It supports the podcast so very much as we move into our 4th year. And don't forget to tell your friends so they can listen too. Spring is here. Love is in the air. If you want to learn more about my therapy and coaching services, go on AndreaAtherton.com and schedule a free call with me. I'm going to leave you with my favorite short but sweet quote. Love is the only true power.